This is my prime example of people that's puppet masters trying to control the narrative.
It now appears if she wants to run for supervisor again, it will have to be as a write-in.
Tiffany Henyard, the self-proclaimed supermayor of Dalton, Illinois, is facing a rapidly crumbling political empire. Once a dominant force, Henyard now makes headlines for all the wrong reasons: accusations of extravagant spending and questionable leadership decisions. Her career is spiraling out of control, and a scandal has left even her most loyal supporters in disbelief. Could this mark the dramatic end of one of Illinois' most controversial political figures? Brace yourself. This story is about to be rewritten. The latest blow to Henyard's political career came during a historic and contentious Democratic caucus in Thornton Township. For the first time in decades, the party chose a caucus over a primary election to determine its nominees, raising the stakes significantly. Henyard, who currently serves as Thornton Township Supervisor and Mayor of Dalton, was aiming to secure her spot on the 2024 election ballot. However, things did not go as planned. In a dramatic turn of events, Henyard's name was completely barred from the ballot due to her failure to present a full slate of candidates, including roles like assessor and trustee. Without a certified assessor on her ticket, her candidacy was deemed invalid. Henyard was furious, accusing her opponents of foul play. The caucus itself was chaotic, with hundreds of people gathering at the Homewood Flossmoor Park District Auditorium in the cold to witness the political showdown. Inside, tensions were high as Senator Napoleon Harris, the state politician and Thornton Township Democratic committeeman, orchestrated the event with precision. Harris, who also ran for the supervisor role, emerged victorious, securing the Democratic nomination and effectively sidelining Henyard from the race. As the results were announced, the crowd erupted not in applause for Harris, but in jeers and taunts directed at Henyard. Some even shouted, "Nan, hey, hey, kiss on," in what could only be described as the ultimate political humiliation.
The Democratic caucus works right here in Thornton Township. You can also say that she flunked out because her name is not appearing on the ballot.
The latest blow to Henyard's political career came during a historic and contentious Democratic caucus for Thornton Township. For the first time in decades, the party opted for a caucus instead of a primary election to determine its nominees, raising the stakes significantly. Henyard, who currently serves as Thornton Township Supervisor and Mayor of Dalton, was hoping to secure her spot on the 2024 election ballot. However, things didn't go as planned. In a dramatic turn of events, Henyard's name was barred from the ballot entirely because she failed to meet the requirement of presenting a full slate of candidates, including roles like assessor and trustee. Without a certified assessor on her ticket, her candidacy was deemed invalid, leaving her furious and accusing her opponents of foul play. The caucus itself was chaotic, with hundreds of people braving the cold to gather at the Homewood Flossmoor Park District Auditorium for the political showdown. Inside, tensions were high as Senator Napoleon Harris, a state politician and the Thornton Township Democratic committeeman, orchestrated the event with precision. Harris, who also ran for the supervisor role, emerged victorious, securing the Democratic nomination and effectively shutting Henyard out of the race. As the results were announced, the crowd erupted, not in applause for Harris, but in jeers and taunts directed at Henyard. Some even shouted, "Nan, hey, hey, kiss him goodbye," in a move that could only be described as the ultimate political humiliation, leaving Henyard reeling from the loss. This loss was more than just a political setback for Mayor Tiffany Henyard. It was a stinging public humiliation that further plunged her leadership into disarray, sparking widespread frustration and criticism among Dalton residents. Henyard's critics wasted no time pointing to this latest defeat as yet another glaring example of her unraveling leadership and missteps in office. Social media erupted with fiery commentary, reflecting the growing discontent among voters. One disgruntled resident posted online, "Dalton, please vote as early as you can. Everyone vote. Make it too big to rig. Get her out of there," capturing the collective outrage of many in the community. Another resident commented, "Money and power corrupts. The more power, the more corruption," succinctly summing up the perception of Henyard as a leader whose priorities seemed increasingly detached from the needs of her constituents. The fallout from this loss highlighted the deepening divide between Henyard and her electorate, many of whom have grown disillusioned by her actions in office. Allegations of financial mismanagement, excessive spending, and self-serving decisions have fueled the sentiment that her leadership is more about personal gain than public service. Residents have repeatedly voiced concerns over the misuse of taxpayer money, citing examples such as her controversial $43,000 Amazon shopping spree, lavish trips funded by public coffers, and her apparent focus on self-promotion rather than addressing the community's pressing needs. The sense of betrayal among voters has only grown as Henyard's administration faces mounting scrutiny, including an ongoing FBI investigation into alleged misuse of funds. This latest political blow has further eroded her standing, with many viewing her as a leader out of touch with the struggles of her community. Critics accuse her of fostering a culture of arrogance and entitlement, reflected in her public persona as the supermayor, and her combative interactions with both the town's trustees and residents. The discontent isn't limited to online outrage, it's palpable on the streets of Dolton. Residents are grappling with declining public services, a ballooning budget deficit, and a growing sense of mistrust in local government. The calls for accountability and change have grown louder, with many seeing this as a pivotal moment to reclaim their town's future. Henyard's loss has emboldened her critics and galvanized voters who are determined to bring new leadership to Dolton, signaling a shift in the political landscape as the town grapples with the consequences of her controversial tenure. Chris Lawson reported that many people in Dolton felt mentally drained and benefited from the presence of her presence and her public service.
Calls for a change at the top in South Suburban Dolton.
Of course, we are talking about Mayor
To fully understand the dramatic downfall of Mayor Tiffany Henyard, one must look back to her earlier days when she was considered a rising star in local politics. Henyard once cultivated an image of being untouchable, branding herself as the supermayor, a leader capable of seamlessly juggling the demanding roles of Dolton's mayor and Thornton Township supervisor. This dual role granted her immense control and influence, but also made her a target for critics, who soon began to question her motives and methods. Accusations of prioritizing personal gain over public service began to surface, and her reputation as a dedicated leader started to unravel under the weight of allegations of embezzlement, misuse of taxpayer funds, and extravagant spending. The controversy surrounding Henyard quickly snowballed, with one of the most glaring issues being her alleged misuse of public funds. Reports revealed her lavish lifestyle, funded by the very taxpayers she had sworn to serve, trips to luxury destinations, extravagant dinners, and even personal beauty services allegedly charged to public accounts. This fueled outrage among Dolton's residents. Perhaps the most shocking revelation was that Henyard had charged over $33,000 to Amazon in a single day, a staggering amount that left many questioning her judgment and ethics. For a town with a median income of just over $24,000, such spending was not just inappropriate, it was deeply offensive to residents struggling to get by. One local resident lamented, capturing the sentiment of a community that felt betrayed by its leader. As these allegations mounted, Henyard's grip on her image as a supermayor began to falter. Critics pointed out that her leadership seemed more focused on self-promotion and personal luxury than on addressing the pressing needs of the community. Beyond her lavish spending, her administration became tarnished by a growing list of controversies, including questionable financial decisions, a lack of transparency, and a perceived disregard for the very people she was elected to serve. Residents began to see Henyard as a leader who had lost touch with the struggles of her constituents, prioritizing personal extravagance over public welfare. Henyard's dual roles, once a testament to her ambition and capability, eventually became symbols of her overreach and mismanagement. They painted a picture of a politician who had stretched herself too thin, facing criticism on all fronts. As public trust eroded and the walls closed in, her fall from grace seemed almost inevitable, leaving behind a legacy of broken promises, unanswered questions, and a community yearning for change.
We're waiting Mayor Henyard to arrive. We'll give another 5 minutes.
Mayor Tiffany Henyard delayed the meeting with no explanation.
The financial missteps of Mayor Tiffany Henyard continued to spiral, further highlighting the severity of her administration's issues. A preliminary investigation led by former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, who was hired as a special investigator, revealed that the financial health of Dolton, Illinois, had rapidly deteriorated under Henyard's leadership. The general fund, which had once boasted a healthy balance of over $5 million in 2022, had plunged to a shocking deficit of nearly $4 million by mid-2024. Lightfoot, in her analysis of the situation, did not mince words, describing the fiscal outlook as dire and pointing directly to Henyard's spending as a key contributing factor to the city's financial woes. The investigation uncovered several eyebrow-raising expenses that only amplified the perception of mismanagement and waste. A particularly concerning discovery involved police officer overtime payouts that far exceeded the annual salaries of some officers. For example, one officer was found to have earned over $100,000 in overtime alone, on top of their regular salary. These excessive payouts, combined with other questionable expenditures, painted a grim picture of financial excess, mismanagement, and a complete disregard for the fiscal health of the town. The public's frustration was palpable as they learned about these lavish expenditures, particularly when many residents were struggling with the rising cost of living in a town with a median household income of just over $24,000. Henyard's financial controversies were only part of the problem. Her abrasive leadership style and relentless pursuit of power alienated colleagues and constituents alike. Tensions within the Dalton Village Board grew as trustees began openly criticizing her administration, accusing her of running the town like a dictatorship. Several public meetings saw Henyard engaged in heated confrontations, where she would openly berate trustees and dismiss their concerns. At one particularly infamous moment, Henyard declared, "You all forget I'm the leader. They want to hear from the mayor. You all ain't learned that yet. The mayor, not the trustees, that don't do nothing." This comment only fueled the growing perception that Henyard was increasingly out of touch with the needs of the community and unwilling to collaborate with those she governed alongside. The remark further cemented her image as a leader who viewed herself as above reproach and dismissive of those working with her in government. As the investigation into Dalton's finances continued, the broader consequences of Henyard's leadership were becoming clear. Residents, who had once viewed her as a powerful figure capable of revitalizing the area, now saw her as the embodiment of dysfunction and mismanagement. Her pursuit of power, both within Dalton and Thornton Township, had created a toxic political environment that left many frustrated. Her reputation as the supermayor had been tarnished beyond recognition, and every new revelation seemed to sink her further into scandal. The issues in Dalton went beyond financial mismanagement and personal conflict. Residents began to voice concerns about the deteriorating state of local services. Public works were failing, emergency services were underfunded, and many Dalton residents felt their concerns were being ignored by the very leadership they had entrusted to address their needs. A ballooning budget deficit, poor service delivery, and the growing sense of a leadership that prioritized personal gain over the community's welfare created a perfect storm of dissatisfaction and frustration. Henyard's financial troubles were compounded by her inability to maintain control of her administration and the local political landscape. The once solid support she had from local stakeholders began to crumble as more and more people, from the Dalton Village Board to the general public, openly questioned her leadership. Her relationship with the board became especially strained, with trustees accusing her of undermining their authority and disregarding their contributions. Public meetings became battlegrounds for heated arguments, and Henyard's inability to work collaboratively only served to isolate her further from her allies and constituents. As the situation deteriorated, the growing perception that Henyard had become disconnected from the realities of the community she served fueled even more discontent. Many residents saw her lavish lifestyle, funded by taxpayer money, as a stark contrast to their own struggles. Experts in the fields of mental health, psychiatry, and mental illness have broken down the barriers, setting a weight for grassroots groups to effect social change. The scandal surrounding her $33,000 Amazon shopping spree was one of the most glaring examples of her misuse of public funds, and it became emblematic of what many saw as a broader pattern of extravagant spending on personal indulgence at the expense of the town's well-being. And critics of Henyard continued to build their case, pointing to the continuing investigation into potential corruption and financial malfeasance. An ongoing FBI probe into the misuse of funds further underscored the deepening crisis, and many began to question the legitimacy of her continued leadership. Residents voiced their frustrations on social media, with many calling for her removal from office and greater accountability from their elected officials. One comment captured the essence of the public sentiment: money and power corrupts. The more power, the more corruption. For many in Dalton, Henyard had come to represent the worst aspects of political power: self-serving and out of touch with the needs of those she had promised to serve. In addition to these allegations of financial mismanagement, Henyard's leadership style had increasingly been characterized by a sense of arrogance and entitlement. Her constant self-promotion and combative stance toward both the town's trustees and its residents painted a picture of a leader more concerned with maintaining her own position of power than with addressing the real challenges facing her constituents. Her tenure in office, which had once been hailed as a promising political ascent, now seemed like a cautionary tale of how unchecked ambition and poor decision-making could undermine even the most promising political careers. While Henyard had once seemed poised to lead Dalton and Thornton Township to a better future, her time in office had instead been marked by a series of missteps and controversies that left the town in financial turmoil. The fallout from the investigation into her administration's spending, combined with her inability to connect with her constituents, had led to widespread disillusionment among Dalton residents. What had once been a community filled with optimism had now become a symbol of political failure and corruption. As Henyard's political empire continued to unravel, it became clear that the public's appetite for change had grown insatiable. Calls for her resignation intensified, with many residents seeing this as a pivotal moment to reclaim their town's future. The growing discontent among the electorate, coupled with the ongoing investigations into her actions, signaled a turning point for Dalton. Voters were no longer willing to stand by as their town spiraled deeper into financial chaos, and the political landscape was shifting rapidly. Despite Henyard's efforts to maintain control, her influence was waning. The political structure in Dalton, once dominated by her presence, was now in flux as new leadership began to emerge from within the community. The damage to her reputation, both locally and beyond, seemed irreparable, and it was clear that Henyard's time as a dominant force in Illinois politics was quickly coming to an end. The legacy of her leadership would be defined not by the promise of progress, but by the scandal, financial ruin, and the widespread belief that she had failed to serve the very people who had trusted her with their vote. Ultimately, Henyard's dramatic fall from grace is a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked power, the erosion of public trust, and the consequences of prioritizing personal gain over the welfare of the community. The future of Dalton, and indeed of Henyard's political career, now hangs in the balance as the town grapples with the fallout from one of Illinois' most controversial political figures.
7 minutes, that's all it took for Tiffany Henyard to be out as the Democratic nominee for Thornton Township Supervisor, and she left here visibly.
Adding to her mounting woes, Mayor Tiffany Henyard found herself embroiled in a contentious legal battle with the Dalton Park District. The district accused her of withholding permits for crucial park improvements, effectively stalling projects that had been funded by large grants. Park officials claimed that these actions were politically motivated, alleging that Henyard was targeting the district because it had allowed political opponents of hers to hold meetings on its property. This park district controversy added yet another layer to the growing list of accusations against Henyard, painting a troubling picture of leadership driven more by personal grievances than by a commitment to the community's well-being. Beyond the withholding of permits, reports surfaced that Henyard's administration had issued thousands of dollars in citations to the park district for routine maintenance tasks, such as spreading mulch on playgrounds and installing new equipment, that had previously been carried out without issue in past years. Critics were quick to call these actions petty and vindictive. "Every year we replenish the mulch in the park to ensure the kids are playing on a safe surface, healthy mulch, and we do this every year," said Cleo Jones, the president of the park district. "Now we're being punished for it because of political games." The residents, already frustrated by the lack of progress in public amenities, were growing more concerned about how such petty disputes were affecting their quality of life. With no explanation, meetings were delayed, leaving residents wondering whether the community's interests were being sacrificed for political maneuvering. This ongoing park district controversy added further fuel to the fire surrounding Henyard's already tarnished image. It not only showcased her increasingly erratic leadership style, but also reinforced the perception that she was using her position to settle personal scores, rather than serve the people of Dalton. The issue of withholding permits for park improvements, particularly when the projects were funded by grants meant to benefit the community, seemed emblematic of a broader pattern of poor decision-making and disregard for the public good. Critics argued that the delay in park improvements could harm local children and families who relied on these recreational spaces for their well-being. adding a layer of moral irresponsibility to her political fallout. With her political career already on shaky ground, Henyard's challenges continued to grow. Her name had been removed from the Democratic ballot for Thornton Township Supervisor, and her mayoral position in Dalton was under constant scrutiny. As calls for her resignation as mayor grew louder, rumors of a recall effort gained traction. The once promising leader, once hailed as a trailblazer in local politics, now found herself at the center of a scandal of her own making. The investigation into her administration's financial mismanagement, along with her increasingly autocratic style and personal vendettas, had left her political future uncertain. Her only remaining path to retain her position as Thornton Township Supervisor was to run as a write-in candidate, a strategy that has historically had a low success rate. Meanwhile, the pressure on her to step down as mayor of Dalton intensified, as more residents and political figures expressed their dissatisfaction with her leadership. The rise and fall of Tiffany Henyard is a cautionary tale about ambition, power, and the consequences of losing touch with the community. Once seen as a rising star in local politics, Henyard is now facing an uncertain future, marked by legal battles, public backlash, and a significant loss of influence. Her political career, once filled with promise, now seems defined by controversy and scandal, with questions swirling about whether she has the ability to recover her reputation, or if this marks the end of her time in office. What's next for Henyard remains unclear. Will she be able to claw her way back to relevance, or is her political career effectively over? Some may argue that she is a victim of political sabotage, while others believe she has brought this upon herself with poor decisions, personal vendettas, and an inability to manage power responsibly. As the situation unfolds, only time will tell whether Henyard can salvage any part of her political career, or if she will become another cautionary tale in the world of politics. Let us know in the comments what you think. Is Tiffany Henyard a victim of political sabotage, or has she only reaped what she sowed? Stay tuned for more updates on this unfolding drama. This story is far from over. An expert on brain injury and COVID-19 related diseases, Nigel Artini,